Jamaica, hello world. Thank you so much for joining me here again, once on the Elevator Live podcast with Odane. I'm your host, Odane Brooks. And here on the Elevator Live podcast, I showcase the success stories of young people who are doing excellent work. For the past couple of weeks, I have been talking with young leaders who are leading NGO organizations that are doing great work in their community. And this week, I have another interesting story to share with you that demonstrates that young people are not just entitled beings, but they have retaked the narrative and they are doing excellent work in their community. This week, I will be featuring iBloom Foundation, and this is an organization that continues to demonstrate the willpower that resides within youth. And I have the distinguished pleasure of having on this platform Miss Yanique Mendez, and she leads this important organization. Thank you so much, Miss Mendez, for joining me here on the Elevator Live podcast. How are you doing?
I am fine, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and by extension, the foundation.
Awesome. It is my pleasure to have you here. So, talk to our elevators a little about iBloom Foundation. That's quite an interesting name.
So, the iBloom Foundation was founded in May of 2020 by myself and co founder, Ms. Shanake Dyer. The main reason for establishing the foundation was that we would have realized some discrepancies that would have been happening in our Jamaican society given the onslaught of the COVID 19 pandemic. So, we would have been in the middle of the pandemic during that time, and we realized one key issue was that there was a digital divide in society. A lot of students did not have access to the internet, or they did not have the requisite devices to access those services, and as a result of that there was a huge gap within the education system. So the foundation was established to offer voluntary services and outreach projects as well as mentorship of our youth, because the youth are today, and we believe that when they are empowered, then nothing will be impossible for Jamaica in terms of development.
Awesome, and that's a pretty good springboard to transition into my next question. You started to respond, but I want to hear some more about the inspiration, because I'm sure that this foundation did not just come about. I'm sure you have been harboring some consideration about giving back to your community. So talk to us about that inspiration.
It is quite a very funny story, if I'm being honest. Shanaki and I, we would have shared dormitory at the University of the West Indies. We're both Irvinites, and we're both block sisters on Champion Alpha on Irving. And during the pandemic, we were at home, and it was the 3rd of May, I remember, and we were having a random conversation in the middle of the night about the things that we were seeing coming out of the pandemic. That's how our conversations normally go. We talk about some really random things during the middle of the night. And Shanake said to us, "What can we do? What can we do to assist these students?" And right off the bat, I remember us staying up and conceptualizing the idea of a foundation. And we established it on May 4th. We did not have a name, we did not have a logo, we did not have an organizational structure or anything of the sort. We basically just said we're going to do this. And it was just the other day we were having a conversation, And I said, do you remember our first initiative? It was nothing grand. It was basically going on Instagram and saying to people that, look, we have noticed this great issue, and it's a digital divide. Students can't access internet. Send us some credit and let us disseminate this credit to students. And we were surprised by the outpouring of support that we received. We got over $70,000 in credit, both Flow and Digicel, and we were able to help students from as far as Trelawney, St. Catherine, St. Anne, St. Mary, and Clarendon. It was even this was in May, and in August, we were receiving messages from these students saying that they just got their CXC results and they were successful. They got ones and
Wow.
twos and a few threes, and they thanked us for taking the initiative to address that issue. And there and then we realized that we have a platform that can be used. We have a voice. We have people who are passionate about helping and empowering others. And it is on that premise that we decided that this is something that we can use to empower youth, those who are disenfranchised because of various discrepancies, various disadvantages. So we took that step and we decided that we are going to continue this foundation, and as a result of that, iBloom is where it is at today.
Wow, blooming, I must say that that is quite a story, and I can feel the sincerity and the passion being conveyed from what you just made mention of. So talk to us a little more about some of the other initiatives that the organization has undertaken up to this point.
All right, so in all honesty, we did not expect to expand the way we have expanded. In that same year, 2020, we were having discussions among ourselves as an executive, and a great issue was brought to the forefront, and it was that of period poverty. You might have seen conversations going on about period poverty within different spheres, whether it be on social media or in policy areas. And when we started to look into period poverty during that period, October of 2020, September, October of 2020, we realized that despite it being a great issue, it wasn't one that was taken seriously in Jamaica. If I am not mistaken, it was only Dr. Shellyan Weeks who was the main champion of that issue. And that is an issue that we took up and we established it. We brought other organizations on board in addressing that issue because we do understand that despite despite us being a non-profit organization, it is not a competition. We are not here to compete to see who is the best nonprofit organization. We are here to play our part in our social responsibility of our country. So that was one of the key issues that we took up. And I might add that we're currently in the process of completing some research to inform a policy that will be shared with respective ministries to address the issue of period poverty in Jamaica. And it is our sincerest intention to bring other nonprofit organizations on board where this is concerned. Another issue that we've sought to address was where economically disadvantaged youth comes in when it comes to going back to school. So that is something we've taken on as well in providing or assisting them with stationery and hygienic supplies in going back to school. We've also adopted the Yadel Girls Home in St. Catherine, and we have done some really big projects with them, and we're hoping to undertake a gardening project because we've realized from discussions with the executive director, Mrs. Notice, that one of the major issues they've been having there is food insecurity. Despite it being a state care home, the government takes care of the educational portion of the residents there. However, food security remains a crucial issue, and we've decided to assist them with some form of subsistence. And it is on that premise that we've opted to create a backyard garden for them where fruit and vegetable trees will be planted so they can cut back on the cost of those particular items when shopping for food. So those are just some of the things that we've done, plus some little forums here and there focusing on mental health, women issues, and stuff like that.
Wow, those are some mega projects that you have undertaken, and it's quite good. If I should touch on the point of the period poverty, because previously it has not been an area that has been spoken much about. And if I'm gonna be honest, although I operate within the policy space, it has not been an issue that has come up on the radar before. So I commend your organization and organizations like yours that are shedding some light on this issue. So quite an impressive resume so far in terms of record of achievement, and continue to put in the work there. So you have just shared with
Definitely.
us some of the successes since the organization was birthed, but talk to us about some of the common challenges that beset your efforts.
To be quite honest, I think when it comes to nonprofit organizations and organizations in general, people see that aspect of it where it's all glorious. They see the projects being carried out and stuff like that, but they don't know about what happens in the background when it comes to organizations, particularly nonprofit organizations. And that is a very good question that you've asked, actually, because one of the major issues we have encountered is an organizational issue. Now, how iBloom is set up is that we're not in the same area. None of us are in the same area. I'm in Kingston, Shanake is in St. Catherine. We have executive members from Clarendon, Manchester, and stuff. So it is quite difficult when it comes to mobilization, given that we have our individual lives and stuff. But I must commend the members and the executive committee for being as adamant as they are in ensuring that the projects are carried out, in ensuring that once we have committed to something, that we remain dedicated. Another issue that we've had is where sponsorship is concerned. Now, I am not sure if there are any other organizations that has this issue, or if you would have been cognizant of such an issue, but non-profit organizations tend to have a bad rap when it comes to gaining sponsorship, because despite you having organizations that are authentic and that are true to themselves and their mandate, there are individuals who are not as honest as they proclaim to be. And as a
Mhm.
result, it results in organizations that are authentically trying to do something great, that are trying to effect change in society. It is difficult for us because when you have organizations not fulfilling what they proposed to fulfill when they encounter with sponsors, you find it difficult for sponsors to say, okay, here's another organization, let's assist them. However, I must also say though that we've had some people coming on board who believe in the mandate of iBloom, who have seen what iBloom have been doing, and as a result of that, they have become very amazing contributors and sponsors and stakeholders to what the iBloom Foundation is doing. We were recently gifted $100,000 through the Digital Foundation from one of our one of those persons who have always been looking out for iBloom, Mrs. Zara Marie. We've also have great partnerships with the Sagicor Foundation as well. And those are just some of the corporate sponsors, as well as individuals who, as soon as we say we are doing this project, they're among the first to message and say, how can I help? How can I assist? How can I use my resources to ensure that this particular um, project or initiative comes to fruition? So those are just some of the issues that we've had. Nonetheless, we remain dedicated to the task at hand, because at the end of the day, it is not an individual thing. It goes beyond the ego. It goes beyond being, proud about accomplishing something. I always say to people when we talk about iBloom Foundation, if you go on iBloom's page, you won't see any grand pictures. Particularly, you will never see me on the page itself, because I am not the person who likes to be, giving with one hand while I'm having my phone taking a selfie with the other. That is not me, because I have realized that I could be in positions where I'm in need. I don't want anybody to be doing um that to me. And as a result of that, we realize though that sponsors like to see where their money is going, and we realize that we have to show, what the donations and contributions were used for. So we have created some form of mechanism where sponsors and donors can see that we're staying true to what we say. We have utilized your donations in addressing that particular issue, and this is the result of that.
Awesome. That's a quite comprehensive treatment of that question, and some real issues that you have raised, Yanique, that a lot of organizations operating in the nonprofit space can also relate and connect to. But listening to you up to this point, you give off a very high energy when you speak of iBloom. Where do you get your motivation, and have you gotten to the point as yet where you say, look here, let me just pack up all of this, too many challenges?
In all honesty, I think it comes to a point at times where frustration takes the forefront. And you may not have known me for a long time and stuff, but I am a huge advocate when it comes to mental health. And if I get frustrated, I am going to take a sabbatical. If that sabbatical is a day or two, I'm going to take it. Shanna can also attest to the fact that there are a lot of times when I message her and I'm like, if I did not invest so much in iBloom, and if a lot of people did not believe in the vision of iBloom, I would have left. But I'm just saying that out of frustration, if I'm being honest, because at the end of the day, when I introspect and retrospect on how far iBloom has come and how much further we can go, I realize, as I mentioned before, that it is really not about me. It is really not about me. It is not about any individual within the organization. It's a community of people who believe that we are empowered enough to empower others. We believe that empowered people should empower others. We have been given the opportunity to become educated, to be in spaces where we can socialize and network with people who might see the issue, but because of self interest may not address the issue. We have been given the platform where we can address those issues. And because of that reason, it doesn't matter how frustrated I get. At the end of the day, I'm going to say, look, if there's an issue, we're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to look at what we have done wrong, what we could have fixed differently, or what could have been addressed differently. And we're going to fix that and we're going to execute, because we can't have people depending on us. They might not say to us that they're depending on us, but as citizens of a country, we have a duty, we have a responsibility to ensure that when we elevate, others who are still at the bottom are being elevated as well. If we go up two rungs, it is expected that we bring somebody up one rung with us as well, or both if possible. So frustration is just a feeling, as Shanna would normally say. It is just a feeling, and while it is factual that you're having that feeling, feelings aren't facts. And as a result of that, they will pass, and we still have the work to be done.
Wow, what do I say after that response? Quite poignant response there, Yanique. Um, so I want to hear your thoughts on some of the common challenges that you have detected that young people are facing across the country. What are some of those?
Alright. I was recently asked a question similar to this, and my response is that when we hear about young people, when we hear about social issues, the first thing that comes to our mind is the issue of crime. However, what we normally fail to address is the contributory factors to that major issue. We find that I am in a lot of spaces. I'm in a lot of spaces where youth are concerned. I have served as a youth parliamentarian, and I currently serve as a youth advisor on the National Youth Advisory Council as well. And one thing I've realized is that youth lack motivation. They lack motivation, they lack empowerment, they see the easier ways out as the ultimate way out. So even if we look at issues like poverty, people are not thinking, okay, let me get an education, because when we're in high school and we're taught about social mobility, we are told that education is one of the most common means of social mobility. Nowadays, people are not believing in that because of the society we're living in. Why should I complete a master's degree to still get 120,000 when I can chop a line and get 7,000 US in a day? Right? So we find that they are demotivated. Education isn't enticing. Education isn't enticing. Advocacy is the next thing. People have become so complacent in being underserved that they have lost their voice. And if it's one thing I particularly don't like, is when people say they are the voice for the voiceless. Everyone who is capable of speaking and doesn't have any auditory challenges, they have a voice. What you need to do is to amplify those voices and empower them to advocate for themselves. And that is what we try to do in iBloom. When you empower people to speak for themselves, the government or those in positions to listen will have no choice but to listen. And I can draw a reference to the issue of period poverty. When we started to look at period poverty on a wide scale, bringing into social media, we received a lot of messages from both genders, I might add, that period poverty isn't a huge issue as we make it out to be. Um, we have more important things to address and all of that. But being in spaces where you are cognizant of the various issues that happen in society, you would have known better. And we stuck to that issue and we decided that we were going to escalate that issue. And we are at a point now where we have so many things being done about that particular issue. Just a week or two ago, they implemented facilities on the university's campus, a sanitary napkin dispenser. That couldn't have happened without the conversation being had surrounding period poverty. So when you amplify the voices of those who are ostensibly voiceless, what you're doing to listen to those voices. They have no choice but to listen when you are speaking. And as a result of that, we find that the challenges that are happening, the issues that are happening in society, they continue to be prevalent because we have lost our voice, we have lost our ability to properly advocate and speak out for ourselves as youth. We tend to facilitate this whole idea of tokenism. When you're given a seat at the table and you can sit at the table and rub shoulders with people, you forget why you wanted to be at the table in the first instance. And that is one of the main issues that we have to eradicate. The idea of tokenism, the idea of advocacy doesn't make any sense, the idea of complacency. And those are, it might be minute to a lot of people, but those are actual issues that result in the larger societal issues that we have.
Absolutely. I don't think I can add or subtract anything from that which you have so eloquently articulated, Yanique. So talk to us about where do you see iBloom in the next 5 years?
In 3 years ago, we did not see iBloom where iBloom is at. No. So it is, while we have huge plans for where we want iBloom to go, Shanake will tell you that despite how small a meeting is, the first thing we're going to do at that meeting is to pray and to ask God to just guide where the organization is going. Despite if it's a 5 minutes meeting to debrief about an issue, the presence of God is always going to be welcomed in that particular meeting. And what we have done since we have been in operation is just to allow God to dictate where the foundation goes. So while we have our plans, while we are putting down these foundations, we always are going to be faced with issues that might impede those plans from coming to fruition. But realistically speaking, from our perspective, in 5 years, we see iBloom being change makers. We see iBloom having real partnerships with like minded organizations. We see iBloom effecting changes not only at a grassroots level, but where policy is concerned. We see iBloom continuing the work that we've started and just being that beacon of hope and empowerment and motivation for our nation's youth.
Awesome. I certainly can see iBloom continuing to bloom in the next 5 years. So anyone just joining this episode of the Elevator Live podcast, we are talking with Yanique Mendez, president and co-founder of iBloom Foundation. Great organization doing great work. And these are the kind of stories that we showcase here on this platform. So, Yannick, as we wind closer to the conclusion of this episode, how can persons get in contact if they want to become volunteers with the organization?
Currently, we have over 60 volunteers within the organization. However, if you want to volunteer, it is never too much. It is never too much, it is never too little. If you want to become a part of the foundation, or even if you just want to partake in an initiative that you're seeing going out around, making its round on social media or elsewhere, we have an Instagram page, iBloom.foundation, on Instagram and Twitter as well. You can also email us on via our email address, ibloominitiative@gmail.com, or contact us via call or WhatsApp at 1-876-589-8480. Shanake and myself are the co-founders and leaders of the organization. We can be found on the page as well. So if you don't want to go through the organization's page, you can always search for either of us and message us privately.
Awesome. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk directly to corporate Jamaica and other sponsors because I can tell you the Elevator Live podcast, we are reaching offices, we are reaching people who are in high places. So talk to some sponsors. What do you want to say to them?
So iBloom, like many other organizations out there, are committed to undertaking issues, to championing issues that actually affect youth. I like to say that there are no genuine youth issues because once it is an issue, it is going to affect everyone in society. We have inherited this earth from our foreparents, and those coming are going to inherit it from us. However, rather than leaving it as we found it, we can make a difference in addressing those issues. The issues we adopted shouldn't be the issues we're leaving behind. iBloom has dedicated 3 entire years to building different aspects of Jamaica, whether it is through education, empowerment, mentorship, volunteerism, and stuff. We have partnerships with a lot of entities, and they can attest to the fact that not only are we dedicated, but we're transparent and accountable when it comes to managing donations, when it comes to addressing issues and staying true to what we have said. We've had sponsors, as was mentioned before, such as Sagicor Foundation. We have had a donation from Drusel Foundation. We have a yearly ongoing partnership with the University of the West Indies commuting students' offices, where we oversee 12 to 15 students, and we assist them with service learning and civic engagement. So we have had people who have believed in us, and we have lived up to those expectations, and we will not stop living up to those expectations. So we can be partnered with, we can be worked with. We are true to effecting change where it matters. And if you're interested in working with us, whether you're from corporate Jamaica, whether you're a business owner, whether you're another organization with similar mandate to what the iBloom Foundation is about, then you can reach out to us. We're always willing to work with others. We're always willing, because if one can do it at 50%, best believe two will do it at 100, and three will do it at 150. So the more people we have dedicated to completing a task, the more people we have dedicated to amplifying the issues within society, the more those issues will be addressed. So we're here, we're willing and ready to work. We have an amazing group and community of iBloomers who are always willing and ready to go out there and get their hands dirty. Our outreach coordinator, Miss Kaifa Clark, likes to say that blooming takes dirty work. If you're going to plant a flower, you're not planting a flower in a sandbed. You're planting flowers in dirt, and as a result of that, your hands are bound to get dirty. We don't mind doing the dirty work as long as it is towards a progressive Jamaica, towards a better Jamaica, and towards a more empowered youth population that will take over Jamaica and its ideas and beliefs and values. So we are ready to work. You can always reach out to us via the respective platforms.
Awesome. I know you would have won over a few sponsors right there with that paid promotion. Well, unpaid promotion. Um, so as we draw closer, tell me an organization that you'd want to work with that you have not worked with so far.
There are so many organizations that we've had the opportunity to work with, to be quite honest. One of the organizations that we look forward to working with is wait, it can be an organization, as in a non-profit
But
organization or a
certainly,
corporate. Okay,
non-profit.
one of okay, one we've worked with quite a few nonprofit organizations. To be quite honest, we've worked with Jerome and Aspirar. We've worked with Marcel. We've worked with Brittany. We've worked with quite a few, and you would have been familiar with them because you've interviewed them before. So to be quite honest, I can't think right off the top of my head an organization, because there are so many organizations that we see the work that they have been doing. There are so many organizations that, are you can see from the work that they have done that they're authentic, that they believe in development and empowerment. And I am throwing it out again. If you are in a position to work with us and you want to work with us, go right ahead. If we've worked before and you want to work with us again, definitely we're always open to maximizing our efforts in ensuring that whatever we're doing, we get the best results from it. So, any organization that wants to work, we're willing to work.
Awesome. So my final question as we close this exhilarating, if I could say, episode. There are several young people across the length and breadth of Jamaica. They're going through a period of hopelessness, despair. What would be your words to them at this moment?
All right. I tend to be one that doesn't want to disregard an individual's feelings, because if I can be transparent here, I am one who suffers from chronic depression as well. So I don't want to say, oh, get over it. I never want to say, get over it. But what I can definitely say is that at the end of every storm, the sun comes again. After the darkest period in throughout the night, the sun rises, right? Nothing lasts forever. Nothing, absolutely nothing lasts forever. Feelings are just that, they're feelings. Sometimes those feelings tend to cripple us and keep us in a state of stagnancy, right? So I know that the state of the country, the world in general, is oftentimes depressing. We all have our individual battles to fight. We all have obstacles and impasses that impede us from fulfilling ourselves. However, what I always try to say, and what I always say and live by, is, that proverb that says, grow where you're planted. The lotus is a symbol of that very proverb. The lotus, particularly the purple lotus, is one of those flowers that, despite the environment that it is planted in, it blooms. Despite where you're planted, you can bloom. If that environment is not conducive to your growth, find your people, find your environment, find your situation, and bloom. Never be afraid of growing, never be afraid of blooming, and ensuring that when you are blooming, you help others to bloom as well. As our motto says, when I bloom, you bloom, and we all bloom. So we believe in bringing others with us. We believe in empowering as we have been empowered, because to whom much is given, much is indeed expected. And those are some of the things we live by. So even though, just wrapping up, you might see the lotus, you might see the word I bloom. It is not coincidental. It is not something we just put together. It is something that was done deliberately. It was something that was done because it sends a message to those who know, right? So the lotus is a flower that blooms in any environment. And the name of the foundation is fitting. Bloom, I bloom, because we all can bloom. We all have it within us to bloom. And as a result of that, we believe that everybody can bloom. So despite what you're going through, despite the obstacles, despite the impasses, you can bloom. Find your environment that is conducive to your needs and do not be afraid to bloom.
Certainly, you can bloom, and this has been a very blooming interaction, a very blooming episode of the Elevator Live podcast. Thank you so much, Yanique, for stopping by. The story that you shared, I'm sure, would have excited a lot. It would have inspired and motivated a lot of young people to get involved in advocacy to reclaim their voices. So thank you so much, and I want to commend you on the work that you and the team is executing. I'm sure I will be hearing a lot more about iBloom. So thank you so much for joining me here on the Elevator Live podcast. To my viewers, also, thank you so much for joining me for another week of the Elevator Live podcast. These are the kind of stories that I showcase here on this platform. Give young people like myself the opportunity to talk about what they're doing, to showcase that young people are not just entitled beings, because a lot is being done. So thank you again for joining me here on the Elevator Live podcast. Check out all of the previous episodes on the different platforms on Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube, and continue to log on to the Elevation Dial as we continue to retake the narrative and reclaim the discourse. This has been the Elevator Live podcast. I'm your host, Odane Brooks. Join us next week, same time, different story, whilst we continue to retake the discourse. Have a good one.